What's going on, everybody? So today I wanted to talk about the Broncos quarterback carousel and the untalked about quarterbacks. We only talk about the ones that actually started for the Broncos and none of the ones that should have started for the Broncos. So first we had Tim Tebow, right? Elway the whole entire way with Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow at the end of 2010 showed that he should have been the starter. Why draft him? Like, why draft him if you're not going to start him? Why draft him if you're not going to develop him? Why draft him? You knew the type of quarterback he was coming out of college, and you chose to draft him. You knew that he was a run pass option quarterback. He was never going to be a pocket passing quarterback. So why waste your draft pick on him if that's not what you want? Kyle Orton stunk up the joint in 2011. Broncos went 1-4. And then Tim Tebow went on a playoff run, and the Broncos ended up losing to New England in the divisional round, 45-10. And that was the end of Tebow, right? The Broncos didn't even keep him around. They didn't do anything. They just got rid of him, sent him off to the Jets. Granted, they did do it for Peyton Manning, and that ended up panning out for them. The move to go for Peyton Manning panned out for the Broncos. They ended up winning the Super Bowl, thanks to the great team building by Adam Peters, Pat Bowlen, and the foundation that was laid there years prior. They were able to win a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning because they were a team that was truly a quarterback away. So I'm not going to be as harsh on that. But what I will shed light on is the fact that their Elway was just going against Tim Tebow, and he was obviously the better choice than Kyle Orton at the time. Then, after Peyton Manning retires, they trade up in the draft to select Paxton Lynch, and they had no. What was the plan for him? What was the plan for him? You traded up to draft this man, and he got no chance. This man was a dead man walking. He had no chance. He didn't even start a full season. There was no plan to develop this guy. And why draft him again? Why draft him? So this man gets his career ruined by the Denver Broncos. The Broncos traded up to grab him with no plan on what they were even going to do with him. And it's very sad for him because had he gone to another team, I feel like his career would have panned out a lot differently. Then you have Kyle Sloter, who's showing a lot of good things in the preseason. The Broncos, again, just get rid of him. Why? I don't know. He could have been another good bridge quarterback to build your team around. Paxton Lynch could have been a good bridge quarterback to build your team around. If they didn't pan out and the rest of the team was gravy, then you could have then traded up in the draft for a better quarterback, or you could have tanked for a better quarterback. But no, let's just cut Kyle Sloter, get rid of him. Then you had Chad Kelly, who I was very high on. I really liked the selection. I really liked his game. And Elway hated this guy. Elway had it out for this guy since day one. And I'm like, why draft him? Why pick him if you don't want him on the team? He was definitely drugged at his party in Denver. He had hallucinations. He had all these things. And, of course, Elway used that to cut him because Elway did not want him there since day one. Again, a wasted talent, a wasted prospect. Had he been drafted elsewhere, he would have found success. I 100% believe that. And yeah, the Broncos did not do anything with this draft selection. They had no plan per usual. Then Drew Lock, a player that I was really high on, a player that I really liked. I knew he was going to be a project. It would have taken him 3 years at least. And the Broncos were primed to really build around this guy. The Broncos traded away Von Miller, and they had all these draft picks last season as a result of that Von Miller trade. They had a lot of cap space. Like, they were primed to really build this team. I said that at the end of the 2021 season, like, they can really rebuild this team if they want to. They had the draft picks to do it, the cap space to do it, and instead, Drew Lock gets the 2020 season, the pandemic season, after he finished the 2019 season 4-1 under Rich Scangarello. Rich Scangarello really brought out the best out of players like Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton. His system really brought out the best in those players. And, of course, the Broncos fire Scangarello. Then they start him in the pandemic season, no off-season training, no nothing. And they have him under a system like Pat Shurmur's system, which is not a fit for Drew Lock. He's not a 3-step, get rid of the ball quarterback. This guy thrives with play action, bootlegs. Again, he does his best work from the play action. He likes throwing the ball deep. He's a gunslinging quarterback. He loves to hit his tight ends. He loved Noah Fant and Scangarello's system. And no, I mean, he thrives when the running game is firing. He thrives from the play action, which is why I believe that if Seattle gave him a chance to start, he would actually succeed in Seattle. So, yeah, he would have been a 3-year project. The Broncos gave him one full season. 2020 ended up getting banged up against the Steelers, to no surprise, thanks to that offensive line. And Drew Lock was the perfect bridge quarterback. You could have built the rest of the team around him, rebuilt your offensive line, rebuilt your inside linebackers, rebuilt the interior defensive line. You could have rebuilt the safeties because the safeties are terrible. You could have rebuilt a lot of things on this team. And then if it didn't pan out for Drew Lock, then you could have focused on the quarterback. But instead, we decided to trade all those assets away. We trade away Noah Fant. We trade away Drew Lock. We trade away all those draft picks for Russell Wilson. And then we hit the final nail in the coffin by signing Russell Wilson to a huge contract. These were all quarterbacks who were young, who were talented, who could have been those bridge guys for the Broncos. And the Broncos chose to start people like Teddy Bridgewater, like Case Keenum, like Joe Flacco, like Trevor Siemian, people who you knew weren't going to go anywhere. Instead of starting the young guys who have some kind of promise to them, you stick with the has-beens, you stick with the used-to-bes, you stick with the you already know who they are. And it didn't pan out for them. And Russell Wilson is the latest example of that. These are all quarterbacks the Broncos could have, should have, and would have, and they never did. Even if they all didn't pan out, I'd have rather have saw what they had and then went from there versus making this horrible trade for Russell Wilson, signing him to this horrible contract. And it's all because of Elway. He's anti-development. He's anti-long-term. He's let's develop this quarterback. Let's build around this quarterback. Let's hire coaches that have a system around this quarterback. They're all about let's sign has-beens, used-to-bes. Let's have Band-Aid fixes, the fix-it-quick stuff, and it never pans out. And that's exactly what the Trust 2.0, a.k.a. the new Broncos ownership, is doing. I don't see any difference in the way this offseason is going than it did under the Trust 1.0. So these are all the quarterbacks the Broncos should have started. They were all in their backyard. I'm not saying it would have changed the fortunes of the franchise, but you could have had any one of these guys for a fraction of the price that you're paying for Russell Wilson, and you could have gotten similar, if not better, results because you would have at least been able to build the team around them. So Broncos are stuck with Russell Wilson for years to come, and they have no head coach in sight, and the Broncos are just in a terrible position. They're going to be the next Lions. They're going to be the next Cleveland Browns until the Broncos ownership decides to clean out the front office and do a reset on the entire organization, which I don't see happening.